Stephanie Herseth Sandlin is well deserving of this recognition with this year's Eminent Service Award, which reads, in recognition of Stephanie Herseth Sandlin, whose tireless support and vision for rural electric cooperatives and the important programs they champion have significantly benefited member owners. Because of your passion and unwavering advocacy for rural America, East River Electric Power Cooperative is pleased to recognize you with our highest honor. Presented on September 7, 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephanie Herseth Sandlin.
Well, thank you very much for this distinguished award. Jim, I appreciate your leadership, the board of directors, along with Wally Johnson, the entire board of East River Electric. Jeff and Trudy, Jeff, your outstanding leadership, along with Scott and Jim, Greg and Bob, and the entire dedicated staff at East River, other distinguished guests that are here with us today, and all of East River member cooperatives. It's nice to be here with so many friends, and as I look across the room, I know I would be in danger of trying to identify everybody that I'd want to say thank you to personally, but I do just want to maybe pick one table since they're in my line of sight here in the back. Folks that sort of from my neck of the woods up there in northeastern South Dakota, Wayne and Bev, Peggy and Kermit, and of course Jim Berg, not from that part of the state, but a distinguished career in public service. Learned a lot from Jim when I worked at the Public Utilities Commission, and a great leader in wind energy and a number of other areas. But so many people like them throughout this room today that I owe a great amount of gratitude for in helping me over the past decade to better understand the issues from your experience, your perspective, to be the advocate that I work to be on your behalf in Washington. It was a tremendous experience and a great honor to serve on your behalf in Washington. A number of things that we were able to achieve together, some challenges that we worked through along the way. But this service award means a great deal to me. And I want to just mention to you, because I was, after Jeff had talked with me and mentioned that the board had made the decision to award me the Eminent Service Award for this year, it meant so much to me for so many different reasons. And I knew that this event was coming up, and I was in Pierre for Labor Day with Max and Zachary and my Aunt Connie, who's there, and my dad and some other folks from that side of the family. And my Aunt Connie gave me these two huge scrapbooks from newspaper clippings that my grandmother Lorna had kept over the years from my grandfather's public service. And so I was going through those over Labor Day as we were there in Pierre, and I came across a picture, a pamphlet of pictures of all of the members of the board of directors for Northern Electric, and my grandfather was elected to the board in 1961, so his picture was there. And then I was sharing with Jim and Margot that I came across this picture from March 1962 of my grandparents and another couple walking down the boardwalk in Atlantic City in the March 1962 NRECA convention. And then in May of 1962, I see this big headline making the announcement of a $36.6 million REA loan to Basin Electric, Ron, for a new generating plant. And then a few months later, another big headline, these fabulous pictures. August 1962, President Kennedy's visit to Pierre for the opening ceremony of the Oahe Dam project. So it's with our state's history and my family's history in mind that I'm honored and proud to accept the award that you bestowed to me today, and thank all of you for your service over many years. For those of you that have been serving on different boards for different co-ops for a number of years, who have had family members who served before you, who have seized opportunities, worked through different challenges, recognized the role of local communities, of members, of leaders, of different levels of government in assisting to grow rural America, electrify rural America, provide other services to rural America. And I accept this award today, but want to assure you that my service to cooperative values is in no way at an end. Because as I got some great training in my 20s to become an advocate in our legal system, and then was given the opportunity by voters when I was in my 30s to put that training to work on behalf of South Dakota, I'm now making the transition from the public sector to the private sector in the first year of my 40s, continuing to work on issues important to agriculture, energy, and rural economic development. We have all known throughout this year that we've got a series of budget constraints and regulatory challenges that spell interesting times for rural America, whether it relates to changes that we'll likely face in the next farm bill, continuing to try to push toward a broader, more comprehensive national energy policy, looking at how we fund much needed infrastructure development. And of course, we've got these joint committee proceedings that we're looking at this fall, and what that might mean as members in Congress tackle the national debt. As I look at your theme for this year's annual conference, Investing Today for a Smarter Tomorrow, unfortunately there is little appetite in Washington, D.C. today for investing today, because far too many believe that investing is just more spending. It's presenting hurdles to innovation, which is one of the values I know that you share in terms of innovating to find new solutions to old and new challenges. And in my opinion, in my experience, it's not the discretionary spending that should be targeted to make the right investments that we know have a good return on that investment. It's not the discretionary spending that's posing the biggest problem to our national finances. It's the mandatory entitlement programs and the tax code that are the primary problem. So while we watch the Senate pursue its appropriations for fiscal year 2012, working under a discretionary spending cap that was negotiated as part of the debt ceiling negotiation earlier last month, we know that we've got some problems that we'll have to confront and work through for our industry and what you do to provide electricity and power to rural America. For example, wind energy. Jim, in his introduction, made mention of my work in the last Farm Bill in authorizing the REAP program, our work with Greg Von Wald and MTI and Basin Electric and so many other partners for the wind turbine to provide training to the students in the wind power program at MTI. We have pending the expiration of the Section 1603 Treasury program that was the grant in lieu of tax credit program that worked so well over the last 2+ years to put tens of thousands of megawatts of new wind capacity online that we likely couldn't have had otherwise. That expires December 31st of this year. The production tax credit, investment tax credit expire at the end of next year. So these are some very difficult decisions that will have to be made in the legislative arena, and questions that folks have to ask themselves about: are we going to continue to make those types of investments and to pay for those investments and make hard choices elsewhere to continue that kind of progress that we've seen and how good it's been for wind energy in South Dakota? Are we going to make the same kind of investments that we made in the biofuels industry by protecting the renewable fuels standard that is now going to suffer an onslaught after the victory of the detractors in ensuring that the VTEC and tariff expire at the end of the year, if not before? We have, just to give you an example, from an earlier appropriations bill by the House for fiscal year 2012 for both the REAP program and the Biomass Crop Assistance Program. Let's just take REAP, for example. In fiscal year 2010, we funded REAP with $62 million and $39 million, respectively, of mandatory and discretionary dollars. In last year's continuing resolution final agreement for fiscal year 2011, that was $70 million for mandatory, $5 million for discretionary. And the House bill provided $0 mandatory and $2.3 million. $2.3 million for discretionary. Now, the Senate is undertaking its ag appropriations committee or ag appropriations bill today. So this afternoon we'll know, hopefully they can bump up at least the discretionary number for REAP. Same with BCAP that was zeroed out in the House bill. But again, we've got a little bit more room to work with because of the discretionary spending cap was higher than the number allocated in the House bill. But I wanted to make mention of some of these discretionary spending areas as it relates to the investing for today for a smarter tomorrow. But also I know it's been a pretty rough regulatory environment, particularly with the EPA's focus on stationary sources of emissions and what that means for coal-fired facilities across the country, particularly in rural America. Scott heard me give a presentation down in Des Moines about sort of the double whammy rural America is getting when EPA focuses so much on regulating the stationary sources of emissions without looking at the mobile sources of emissions. And I won't get into all the technical details of what's going on in terms of the fuel composition and where biofuels could be an answer to some of what's going on in some of the non-attainment areas in our cities across the country. Another economic advantage to those in our part of the country rich in biomass that led the way in developing a biofuels industry, in part with many rural electric cooperatives' help, allowing the use of capital credits to expand investment opportunities for members to become investors and to get their dividends that many have been receiving in the ethanol industry for a number of years.